This presentation will present some ideas for teaching in the 7-week semesters. Some of the information in this presentation are from a website that is listed here below. I encourage you to take a look at it. Having success in the 7-week term really comes down to what I see as 4 factors. One is preparing students to succeed. Second are those content considerations. Third, the area of support and feedback. And then fourth, effective learning by design. Let's take a look at each of these in turn. First, let's talk about preparing students to succeed. Here are some ideas that will help you with that. You need to communicate clear expectations by making it easy for students to understand very early in the class exactly what must be done to succeed. This might take the form of a list of assignments and due dates or some other ideas. Here's another idea. You might communicate about communication. Provide guidelines and rules for interactions in the class, such as how students should expect to communicate with you, what your response to email policy is. For example, a common policy in a compressed class is for the instructor to promise a 1 business day response to email. You need to explain other class policies to prepare students to succeed. For example, explain your attendance policy, late penalties for assignments, and other things that will help students really understand your expectations. You need to explain the challenges of a compressed format. Explaining the challenges of a compressed format is a good way to acknowledge what might be worrying students, as well as helping your students prepare themselves for this experience. For example, students might be concerned about their ability to successfully do projects or papers or study for exams. Help them by discussing the time commitment expected to deal with the workload in the class. Consider having a discussion about the reason behind the compressed format, focusing on a maximum of 2 classes at a time, higher engagement in each class, success at other institutions like Jackson College. Another thing to include would be what techniques you are using to ensure success in the shorter term. You need to identify potential problem areas. As you consider the class you're teaching, or as you gain experience teaching in a compressed term, you'll no doubt become aware of what causes the most problems for students. Helping students know what these issues are may help them avoid the problem. A good idea is to have introductions and have quick trust activities to get students to work together quickly. Introductions and quick trust activities help the students to feel a part of the class. It helps them form as a group and help them identify potential study partners and group members. Quick trust activities take this a step further and help students move beyond introduction to collaboration and trust. There are many team building and introduction activities that can be used, and these can be found in books, professional publications, or via an internet search. Scaffolding group activities by previewing them, helping groups form, and reducing ambiguity to a reasonable level can help. If students understand the model or have an example to follow, if that's appropriate, it can help them succeed in doing group projects. If technology is to be used by a group, for example, discussions or synchronous tools like Skype, etc., consider having the same technology be required for an individual activity in some way. If you do this prior to the group activity, your group members will have a level of comfort with the technology before they need to use it for the group project. Content considerations. You need to focus on outcomes. This is sometimes called backwards design. As you review your class and make plans for what you'll do in each class meeting, a good place to start is at the end. This is backwards when compared to the way we often think about a class. We usually think about a class going forward. Well, I need to do this, then this, then this, and then I'll figure out what to do in my assessment. In backwards design, what you need to do is identify what students have to know and have to be able to do. Then think about your assessments. Choose good assessments for what they need to know or do. You may have to create these assessments, but the key is you want to make sure that the assessments will let you be sure that the students know and can do the things that you've identified as being the end result. Then you identify readings, outline your presentations, and develop learning activities and projects that will help students achieve what they need to do to succeed. When approaching a class in this backwards way, you'll often find that you can create a more efficient learning path for your students. Next, consider the depth versus breadth. In some classes, the expectation is to cover a great deal of material at a minimum depth. In others, it's more important to increase the depth of what is learned. Of course, many classes require both. It's up to you as the instructor to make good choices about when to go broad and when to go deep. By making these smart choices, you have some control over the workload and cognitive load placed on students. Again, the key is to ensure that your students achieve the actual required outcomes in the class. Establishing relevance is an important part of motivation. Relevance is simply making connections between the course and the student's real-world experiences or their anticipated need to know something. Relevance can be developed by sharing your own background in the field, creating tasks that result in student understanding why they need to learn what your class teaches. Individualizing instruction can be challenging, but it's also rewarding. Individualizing doesn't mean that you have to have entirely different assignments for different students, but consider having multiple options for information, text and audio, for example, as well as optional forms for expression of learning. Allowing students to choose to write a report, create a poster, or if time permits, give an oral report to demonstrate learning. Next, think about your support and feedback. Technical support. In a shorter term, the consequences of not being able to log into email, JetNet, or course content could be a problem for students. Identify technical support sources before you need them. Make sure students know about the Solution Center, for example. Make sure you know about the digital inclusion storefront on campus where they can buy inexpensive technology like laptops. And make sure you also know about technical support for any publisher-provided content that your course uses. Flexibility is expressed in various ways. While it's no doubt important to have due dates, there are times when instructor discretion needs to be used to provide some flexibility to a student with a reasonable need for accommodation. You might consider allowing a student to submit an assignment late, perhaps with a small grade penalty rather than not accepting late assignments. You might not create or permit an alternative assignment in some cases, or you may be in a position to waive or drop a non-critical assignment. Fast response to questions is really important in a compressed term. In these shorter terms, you really need to be proactive about responding to student questions, which might come to you in the email form or maybe in a class forum that you establish. A recommended policy is to respond to all student questions in such venues within 1 business day. It's easier to create this policy than follow it, though, so make sure you develop ways of handling the expected volume of communications in the class. Some ideas. You might prioritize questions that are preventing students from progressing and are causing frustration. Decide on a preferred method for dealing with communication. Some instructors prefer email, while others do not like email and prefer to use a forum in the course. Whatever option you choose, teach your students about your preferences, make sure they understand your availability, and inform them about your response intentions or policy and what they should do if they don't receive a response in the planned time. Feedback on assignments. Rapid feedback is really important. As with communications and responses to questions, timely feedback on assignments is crucial in a short-term class. This is especially true of feedback on assignments that could help a student perform better in subsequent assignments. Develop a plan that will ensure that you have sufficient time to do grading. The guideline that's provided by Jackson College is to have standard items graded and returned to students within the week. Certain items, such as long-form papers and projects, may take longer. When feasible, make use of machine grading in the course management system so that students can get immediate feedback on learning checks. This is not recommended for major course assignments, such as final exams, which likely should be done under supervision. Instead, use these machine-graded learning checks as ways for students to practice what they're learning and help identify areas where they need to study more. 7-week success isn't easy. It really comes down to you and thinking about these aspects, preparing students to succeed, helping them understand what they need to do, taking those considerations in the content areas to structure the learning engagement in the most efficient way, supporting your students and giving them rapid feedback in all things, and then effectively learning to design online classes or face-to-face and hybrid classes if that is your role. By attending to these 4 factors, we can help our students succeed in these compressed classes. As always, if you have questions about any of this, please feel free to consult with me, Brian Newberry, your instructional designer. I'm happy to help you with the design and also the structuring of your successful 7-week term class.